Hello, this is Katie and this is what we're going to be making today in my tutorial. So this is all made from ingredients from the Relax and Craft subscription box. If you didn't catch the little video I did previously, you can catch that on my channel. So everything in here is made using ingredients from the box. So I've had a quick look at it there. I'm going to show you exactly what you're going to need and then we'll get on to the making. So what are we going to need to put all this together? So there's quite a few components. Everything that I've used was from the Relax and Craft subscription box for June 2023, but a lot of the things I will list everything down below the video, so anything that you don't get from the video, do always check underneath the video because normally everything is listed there. Also details of how you can get your hands on a Relax and Craft subscription box. So we're going to be using some beading thread. So this is beautiful white beading thread. Like I say, everything came in the box this month, so gorgeous white beading thread. So that is your basic kind of tiger tail. Generally it's a 0.38, I believe. We're also going to be using some French wire. So if you've never used French wire before, basically French wire, if I pulled that out, it would be a very fine wire. And basically what it is it's coiled and your beading thread goes inside it, but I'll show you how to use that as we go along. We'll be using crimp beads, little crimp beads, and crimp covers. We'll be using those in a couple of different ways. So I've left everything in the bags because I'm very messy and drop a lot of things. So we'll be using some jump rings. So these are 4mm inner diameter. We'll be using one of these really beautiful, like a base of this big ring. So this ring, metal ring, it has no opening in it. It's a solid metal ring and it's silver plated, and that is a 25mm diameter. We'll be using some headpins and we'll be using a clasp, and then the other side of the clasp will be a jump ring. And the other thing we'll be using quite a bit of is some chain. So this is your 3mm Rolo chain. And we'll be using lots of spacer beads as well. These are kind of like an oval shape. See if you can see them there. So they're kind of like an oval shape. They're approximately 5 by 3.5mm in diameter. And we'll be using some Prehnite. So these are Prehnite cubes. They're approximately 5mm in diameter or squareage. I don't know how you measure that. But you don't have to use a cube shape. This is just what came in the box. They're absolutely beautiful. These are faceted. So yeah, sort of a 5-6mm gemstone will work absolutely fine. All the measurements as I go along I will give you, and like I say, if I do forget to mention a measurement, I will pop it down in the details below. So we're going to get on and we're going to start making. I've already made up one half. We're going to be making up the other side of this beautiful necklace. So as you can see, I've kind of already made up half the necklace, so we can kind of see where we're going. I wanted to do it so that we can sort of have a guide to what we're looking for as we go along. So the necklace has got this lovely ring. So this is the ring that is in the subscription box that I got. It's a 25mm diameter ring. You can get these sort of things from all sorts of jewellery making findings, craft stores, things like that. And you should be able to find one of them, no problem whatsoever. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to attach the actual necklace part. So we're going to be attaching using our beading thread, using our French wire, some of our findings, attaching our beading thread, popping all our gemstones and spacer beads on. So, and then we will go on, and once we've got all our beads threaded on, pop on another piece of French wire, connect to our chain, and then work to the end, and the other side will be connecting the clasp part on, not the jump ring like we have at this side. And then we'll go on and work on this little design at the bottom here. So just for now, we're just going to take our beading thread and I'm going to show you how to attach. So we'll be attaching to the other side. So I'm just going to turn it over just because it's easier for myself, because I'm right-handed to work on the right side. It's entirely your choice. If you're left-handed, you'll be just working the opposite way round, but I'm right-handed. So we're going to ignore all the things that are on there for now. When you're actually doing this, you'll be doing this before you add all these. So you'll be just doing it one at each side. So for this, we need our beading thread. So this is your normal tiger tail. From the box that I got this beautiful white. We just need to get a few things out and ready. So we need a little piece of your French wire. So if you don't know what French wire is, if you didn't see it a bit earlier, this is French wire. It's a coiled wire. So what it's going to do is going to cover our beading thread. It's going to give our piece more strength, more security, and it's also going to make it a little bit prettier as well. So we're going to get a crimp cover ready. So that's ready there. But we'll get another one out for the other end as well while we're here. And then we need, where are the crimps? There we go. And a nice little crimp bead. So whatever crimp bead and crimp cover you use, just make sure they're kind of matching up in size, that your crimp bead will fit inside your crimp cover. Rather than me telling you an exact size of them, go with what you've got, but just make sure your crimp bead is smaller than your crimp cover, and then you'll be able to sort of hide it without anybody seeing the actual crimp inside. So what we're going to do first is we're going to pop on our crimp bead. It's very tiny, you can see it there. We're going to pop on to our wire our little piece of French wire, and then we're just going to go around the inside of the loop here, inside of the ring, and we're going to come back. I'm going to miss the actual French wire and come back down inside the crimp bead like so. So we've kind of made this loop. Now what we need to do is tighten this up. So I've got about 20 centimeters of my beading thread, which is around about, I think it's about 8 inches or something like that. Yeah, it's about 8 inches. So you can see how nice that looks around the edge of the silver, rather than just being a piece of beading thread. So now what we need to do is crimp it. So when we crimp, we want to make sure this is pushed all the way up so that we've got no thread showing. We want to make sure our beading wires are not crossed, because that wouldn't be good. And then when we look at our crimping pliers, can you see there's 2 notches? So we've got this one over here at the bottom. That's the first one we're going to use. It's the one that's got the little indentation. It's kind of kidney bean shaped, and then the one at the top is more sort of rounded. So the first one we use is the one on mine. It's the bottom, on yours it could be the top, is the one with the little notch out of it. So just again checking that our beads is in place where we want it to be. Our threads are not crossed. I'm going to go down to the little section that's got the little indentation in it, and we're just going to squeeze that nice and gently, nice and firmly, but just go gently just in case you're slightly off the mark. And now that will have squeezed around there. Now if I turn this over, you should see, can you see there's a little groove in there? So that is the part that we are going to kind of squeeze together to form a new bead. It is difficult when you've got something sort of moving around. The first one will be easier because you haven't got the weight. Now what we want to do is go in, let me just get in camera. So just go in and find the right little grip on your, I'm just there now. I'm in that top groove of my plier, so the more rounded one. And I'm just going to very gently just squeeze that a little bit at a time. It slipped a little bit then, so I'm just going to take them off, reposition. Don't rush this. It is a lot harder when you've got something dangling down off the bottom of it. So I'm just going to go in there. I'm happy where I am now. I'm just going to squeeze that together, and that will have folded that kind of in half. And now I've got a little bead in there. So I'm just going to go back in. This is something that you would do kind of more right up to your face as well, not in front of a camera. So it's a little bit trickier. Just making sure, really happy with that. Give it a bit of a tug, make sure you're happy that it's nice and secure. And then let's just take a look at that. You can see we've got that nice piece of French wire around the actual frame. It's got some freedom, it's got that fluidity to it. And now I'm just going to use my crimp cover. I'm just going to pop it underneath so I can hold it in place. So it's just going over my bead exactly where I want it to be. It is a fiddly thing to do. These are the things that come to test us in jewellery making, but we come back to it. There we go, it's in now. So I'm happy with how that's sitting in there. You can see, let's just try and zoom a little bit. See, the bead of the crimp tube that I just used is now sat inside there nicely. Now what I prefer to do is actually go back to my chain nose or some narrow flat nose pliers, and I just squeeze it a tiny bit, then I move it a little bit. Opposite sides, just moving around. Tiny little nibbles, like nibbling it around until it becomes that full bead. Don't just go in and give it a good squash. Tiny little nibbles until you get that nice full bead, and make sure you're really happy with how that's closed up. There we go. So now we're attached at the opposite side, we can see that. So if you hear any noises while I'm doing this video, I've had to leave the window open because in the UK it's very unusual, but it's very, very warm. It's very, very warm and very, very humid. And yeah, you might hear the odd car go past and such. And dogs barking because they're all outside as well. Not mine though. So I just wanted to explain if there was any noise in the background. So now we need to start adding our beads. So what we need to do is copy what we've done before, or whatever design you are doing. So I've got my first bead on. What we want to do is get, see this little bit of extra beading wire? We want to get that inside at least one of the beads. So I can cut it a little bit shorter. Take it a little bit shorter, but I want that to sit inside one of the beads. So my first bead is one of these beautiful Prehnites. It's definitely one of my favourite gemstones, and that little thread has just gone nicely inside that bead. And then I just need to follow the pattern that I've got before. So I'm just going to get my spacer beads out. I didn't get everything out before because I'm a bit of a messy worker and I tend to knock everything everywhere. I don't know whether anybody else is the same, but I think all creatives are a bit messy workers. It's the creative flow, I'm making that excuse anyway. So I'm going to thread a gold. I liked the idea when I got this this kind of kit, this subscription box, of mixing. I liked the green with the gold and the silver, so that's why I decided to use both in this. Just making sure that that little thread is still inside that bead. So we're going silver on this one. So what I might do is, just while I'm just literally threading this, I'll speed the video up just so you don't have to watch the boring bit, just the threading. So keep threading until you've got all of those beads on, and then we're ready to attach to our chain. So we're going to do that exactly the same. We're going to use that little bit of French wire. We're going to use the same technique. So we're going to pop on one of our crimps first. So one of our crimps. Very tiny, there we go. and my French wire. Now I'm just going to go straight onto the last loop. So this little piece of wire is 8 centimeters, which is just over 3 inches. So we've got our chain on there, we've got our little bit of French wire, and we have got our crimp bead. So we're going to go through the crimp bead and hopefully through at least one, if not two. It may not go through, doesn't want to go through that, but we just want to go at least through one bead as well. And we want this to stay. This is the bit where you kind of do a little bit of a persuasion, trying to get everything. What we don't want is this down here to have like gaps, so we want to pull that tight, but we don't want it over tight. We do want some movement, and then you're going to pull this away and then pull this in, and you're just kind of gauging it until you've got that fluidity, because we don't want it so tight that it's stiff. We want it to sort of shape around the neck. Can you see there's a little gap here down at the bottom? So I'm going to pull those down again. Just make sure. I'm just going to pull that in just a little bit more. I need to leave a little bit of give. We're going to gain a little bit of give here, but I need to leave just that little bit of give just so that I can fit my crimp cover on as well. So I'm happy with that. I think that's going to sit nicely. I can just see I've got a little tiny gap here and a little tiny gap here, and that's just going to give me that little bit of movement. And then again, hopefully, because we haven't got the big weight hanging down of this, it might be a bit easier to see this time. So we're going to go in with that little biting part of our crimping pliers. So I've crimped that down, just nice and firm. It forms rounded on this side. And if I flip that over, you'll see that little groove in the crimp. And then I'm going to go in with the top part, and I can grab either side where it's kind of more flatter, and then I just want to gently push, and it'll fold that little groove that we just made in, and then form a really perfect little bead. And just go in if you need to, do any little maneuvers, give it a tug, make sure you're happy with it. And then I can snip off. Now be careful when you snip off this that you don't snip through the main wire as well. We just want to snip off the actual loose bit of beading thread. Okay, so I'm happy with that. All we need to do now is pop our crimp cover on again. So just nicely sitting underneath, using our chain nose or flat nose pliers, little nibbles, and I'm moving. Don't go for the same spot every time. You see I'm just kind of twisting and moving this around a little bit at a time until it comes together, and that way you will get a more rounded bead rather than it being a kind of squished bead. So happy with that. That's nicely rounded. So we're getting somewhere now. So we've got our necklace made, apart from adding our clasp. So I'm just going to grab one of these jump rings, which is a 4mm ID. So that's the internal diameter of it is 4mm. It will be approximately 5mm on the outside. I'm going to grab 2 pairs of chain nose or flat nose pliers, holding with your least dominant hand when we're opening a jump ring, hold straight across it, and then we're just going to hold on to the opposite side and just open it like you would a door. Don't open it this way, because we want it to close back in the same position. So that's nice and open now. You can see that's nice and open. We're going to add the very last link of our chain and the little loop on the end of our clasp. There we go. And then we can go back in, holding one side whilst pushing it closed, so closing the door, and just give it a little wiggle and make sure it's lining up really nicely. So we're happy now. We've got our actual necklace is made, so we're just adding this beautiful drop on the bottom. Okay, so now we're going to add this design that's actually on that beautiful ring that we've got there. So if you can see, in between each of my little chains that are hanging down, there's actually a little bead. So they're actually just crimp covers that I've used to create that bead look. So we'll be adding some of those as well as we go along. So you can see I've already done kind of more than half because I've done the centre one as well. So we're going to be adding these next two. So one of them has a bead. Now that one has 4 links, the one without has 3, the centre one has 5 links. So that's the links of the chain, and the chain is, as I said before, a 3mm Rolo chain. So we're going to go with the next one, which is 4 links. So for this one, we'll be adding a Prehnite, one of our beautiful spacer beads, and we'll be attaching that to our chain using a wrapped loop. So to create a wrapped loop, nice and easy, I do have a whole video that is just on creating wrap loops, so you can refer to that if you need to. But we're going to pop the tip of our chain nose pliers in, push away to create an angle, swap over to our round nose pliers, holding it on the side that we pushed away. We want a nice small loop for this so it matches the chain. Bringing that all the way around to the opposite side, repositioning your pliers, and then crossing that over. So you can see we've got a nice loop centralised there, and then we just need to pick up that link, the one that's got 4 links on, because it's the next one along. So, and I've got those links now attached onto there, onto my loop, and then I can go back to my chain nose pliers, and I can hold that loop that I just made. So I'm just ignoring that little bit of chain, holding the loop, and then I just want to wrap this tail wire around 3 times. That's 1, 2, and 3. Should fit in there. Yes, it does. There, you need nice and tightly wrapped, and then we can use our flush cutters to snip off the end, and then give that a little squish like so. And then what we need to do is we need to attach this after the little bead that's been added. So I'm going to attach this next. So for that I need some jump rings, which are in this little bag here. The jump rings that I'm using are the ones that came in this subscription box. They are 4mm inner diameter. So open that up, just pop that onto your chain, so through the last link of the chain, and then we're just going to pop it in the right position onto that big loop, that ring, and then using, pick up the right pliers, using 2 pairs of pliers, we're going to close that up and kind of give that a bit of a wiggle so it sits really nicely, so it's a full circle once again. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is add another crimp bead. So this is using a crimp bead for a different reason. So we're not using it as a crimp cover, sorry, not a bead, a crimp cover. We're not using it as a cover, we're just using it as a decorative feature, which you can always do. So I've just popped that onto the frame, and then I'm just going to use my pliers just a little bit at a time, just like we did before, just nibbling it round, tiny bit at a time. Don't go too fast until you're happy. There we go, perfect. Happy with the shape of that. It should still move on the frame, so I can move that along, and then I can add my last little bit of detail on, and then my last crimp cover. So again, nice and quick this time, no bead added this time. So I've got my Prehnite, I'm going to go straight in and make my wrapped loop. So pliers are in, push away, swap over to my round nose pliers, and come all the way around until I've got that nice loop. Pick up my little bit of chain, let that sit inside the loop. You might need to kind of give it a little pull to click it through. There we go, we're in there. And now I can just get my chain nose pliers again, hold that loop. So by holding the loop, you're retaining the shape of the loop whilst you're actually wrapping it. So if you want more information on how to make really nice wrap loops, if you're struggling with them at all, I have a whole video just about wrapped loops, so please check that out. It will help you no end if you're struggling with wrap loops. So there we go, that's our last one. Grab one of our little jumper rings, open that up and pop that onto our frame, and then close this up really nicely again, making sure you use 2 pairs of pliers, try not to pick up your round nose, and close it up nicely, giving it that little bit of a wiggle, kind of just lets you set in that position really nicely. So you can see all we need now is that very last little crimp cover. So I'm going to pop that underneath, and then using these are quite narrow flat nose pliers, I'm just going to nibble that in a little bit at a time. Just make sure you're moving around, don't go with the same spot every time. So that's how you end up with something that's not very round. And keep working on that until you're happy with that. I'm happy with that. There we go. So that is, let's just swish these out of the way. Just fasten this clasp. There we go. Let me just zoom out a little bit. There we go. So that is our finished design. That is going to look absolutely gorgeous on. I think I will make some earrings to match those, so watch out for those this week. I might even use the hoops as well. So I think that is going to look absolutely gorgeous on. So these will move around, but they'll sit really nicely when they're on the neckline, like so. I think they're going to look absolutely beautiful. I hope you've enjoyed that. Don't forget to subscribe. There'll be lots and lots more jewellery making tutorials coming up. It's not all just about this box. It's all about all different types of jewellery making mediums. I do a lot of wire work, but I do other things as well. And just going back to the basics and going back to this basic beading has been really a nice little treat for me. I've really enjoyed that, and I hope you have too. So don't forget, when you do subscribe, make sure you click the bell and select all, and then you won't miss any of my videos. If you want more details on the ingredients that came in the box for today's tutorial, there will be a link down below. You can check that out there. It was the Relax and Craft subscription box. This was the June box, but every box is different and every box is amazing. And I will see you again really soon.